And I'm live. It's actually, I had to click through an error message. I should probably fix that. It says I'm out of storage on the account that I used for this. I think that's easy enough to fix. I'll just delete some of my 3-hour live streams because I don't actually need them. That'll free up some storage. There we go. Delete. All right. This is Vlog Thursday 4/17 being done on Saturday. And I just wanted to stay consistent with the numbers. And even though I do other live streams in between, I try to like have this consistency with Vlog Thursday. Unfortunately, I was extremely sick. I was as sick as I ever recall myself being on Thursday. And I was, well, just bad, in a bad place in terms of not well. I got the flu or something. I don't know. Anyways, Friday was another day of recovery. I actually got a few things done. My voice was really hoarse yesterday, and today it's better. And I'm jumping in on a live stream here. So did it a little bit earlier. I like doing these earlier ones because I seem to get a little bit different of a crowd and a few more people, maybe some more in Europe. By the way, many of you from my Signal video have reached out to me on Signal, and that's been pretty cool. So I still have the test phone, and I still been replying to people, and I've had some people contact me on my regular Signal Messenger, which you can find on my website. So that's been cool. Also, Homelab at lawrencesystems.com. Had a lot of good interactions with people there too. And that's been great. I definitely enjoy all the community interaction. I don't like people. There's a lot of assumption that people just ignore their emails or you get flooded, and sometimes they do. I don't look for tech support emails. Sometimes people have a lot of tech support questions, and I just direct those people to my forums because if you're asking questions, other people are. But it's been good. Have people reach out via Homelab at lawrencesystems.com or via Signal Messenger, and just general interactions about videos and topics or things that I missed. But today is talking about StorJ and other things. I was playing with backups a lot because I'm working on a new video for it. And I really wanted to try out StorJ because I think it's a popular storage service and it's integrated right into TrueNAS. And I'm like, okay, if it's integrated into TrueNAS and they've partnered with them, so they probably have a pretty good experience. And so far, I'll say yes. But there's still some cloud things that I don't think are a good experience. And that's kind of what I talk about cloud backups today is I figured it's a good topic. People always ask, where do I back up? Do I use Backblaze? Do I use, insert name of your favorite service? And I think they all suffer so far. And this is where I actually kind of want people's help because searching has not yielded this information for me. My question is going to be, and I'll bring this up several times, probably throughout just talking about strategies here. And what happens is if we are backing something up, and let's share the screen here with my TrueNAS server. So I set up a couple data protection tasks in TrueNAS, and I'd set one up to go to StorJ. By the way, the StorJ one works really nice. I think it's great. Let me delete this test right here. That was just a restore test. I like the native, like they just call it a true cloud backup integration. Very cool. And you can run the job. You can view the details you have, and I'll make this a little bigger so maybe it's easier for people to read. I can restore these different versions. And that's great. Those are all the things you want in a backup, an easy way to backup, easy way to restore. Where I found this a little bit buggy, and I'm going to post in the TrueNAS forums as well on this. The first problem I ran into is if you try to restore somewhere else, it gives you some unusual errors. If you want to do an everything restore in another system, you have to select manually for the restore. Not a big deal, but I'll do a video about this and cover that detail because someone might say, hey, I want to restore from a catastrophic failure, and it just gives me an error. Yes, it's kind of a weird thing. If you back up from a pool and you restore to a pool that doesn't have the same name or a directory structure that doesn't have the same name, gives you an error. It just says invalid path, which doesn't make sense because you still select the path. It just says invalid path. So I thought that was a weird problem. I'll report it as a bug and post in the TrueNAS forums on that. But at least in the meantime, until that bug is fixed, I'll cover that you have to be a little bit, you have to do a different process to do a restore from a disaster recovery if you don't rename the system exactly the same. Most of the time when people are setting things up, they don't always rename them exactly the same. So I thought that was kind of a interesting piece of it. Now, the real problem I have, and let's look at the StorJ account itself. This is where I really don't have a good solution other than looking at maybe I'll write some scripts for this, because maybe, and here's a better part. Please tell me I'm not the first person to run into this and that there's a script already and I'm overthinking this, because that would be a great answer. My problem is when you're in the StorJ interface, that's what this is right here. Here's my LTS TrueNAS demo. And if we go in and look at browse the bucket, for example, it uses encryption. So there's lots of encrypted data here. And this is the latest version of that file versus the version of that file. What you can set inside of here is your immutability. And what immutability really means, a lot of people ask about it, but let's explain it a little more clarity. Everyone says, well, I want magic immutability. And I call it magic immutability because people go, I just want my files never be deleted. Well, that's not as simple as it sounds. With immutability, what you want is from the layer and the permissions at which the files are moved, deleted, created, your backup API key, you want another layer above that for protection. So what we do inside of this, it goes for Backblaze, StorJ, or Wasabi, insert name of your favorite bucket provider for storage. We have these access keys. So we create this access key and we can look at the access key. Actually, does it tell me? That's weird. It doesn't tell me what permissions this access key has. It does it when you're creating. So when you're creating a new access key, you grant it certain permissions. We'll just do this test real quick. We'll do advanced. We want read, risk, write, delete. We need these permissions or we can't back up. If you don't, people think you can just eliminate delete. Then you'll have an infinite storage problem. And every time you revise a file, you won't be able to delete that file and you'll kind of run into an issue. So you want all permissions there, but this is where you don't necessarily want all permissions, because this is like bypass governments, put legal hold, or give object retention. You don't need these permissions set. And what those are ways that we can go back, and even if the files are deleted, there's a retention policy in here that says, hey, someone got into my TrueNAS, found my API key, deleted all my files. I'm going to go log into the web interface and restore them. Except the only way I see to do this through the web interface is going through these files and restoring them one by one, thousands of them. That's impractical. So I think the only way to do this, best I can tell, is a little script. And you can have a script run this from the CLI. You'd create a special API key and say, hey, go back and find all those deleted files and restore them to the last known version. That's the only practical way I really see doing this. It works the same in Backblaze. Actually, I should probably log into Backblaze account so we just have both pulled up. So let's log into my Backblaze account because I have that one in here for free. For those who don't know, Backblaze offers a free account still for, I forget how much storage you get with it, but I still use Backblaze for stuff, a couple little things, but not much. Mostly I do my backups with offsite storage. But going over here to Backblaze, we have lifecycle settings on Backblaze, and we can say keep so many versions of the files. But the same problem will persist. And what this Backblaze bucket has in it, if we look at the browse files, I've deleted this file, so there's not an actual working version of this file in here, but I can restore the previous versions. But the only way to do that, once again, would be to click and download them in here. There's not a restore option to restore those files. So back to, I couldn't find, or maybe I just need to hunt for it better, some good scripting that would do this, because I want to be able to recover from a scenario where someone gets into my TrueNAS. And if you're in the TrueNAS, if you didn't know this, and there's not really a way around this, backup credentials, B2, there's my key ID. And if I hit this, it'll show you my application ID. If someone has your application ID, all they need is then they could use that AP ID to go in the command line and purge all your backups. That's not good. That's the threat mitigation that's really hard to get against. It's like, cool, I have my cloud backups, which absolutely prevents you from like your normal disaster scenarios of my NAS has failed. My files are hopefully somewhere safe, and they normally, if you've got a good backup process running, absolutely. Is it bad? I just do my backups to Google Drive. Yes, Google Drive is not GCP. Google's not bad. Google's pretty good about backups. As much as love or hate Google, with limited exceptions, Google's only had, that we know of, one major oops. And people made a big deal out of it, as they should. It was absolutely a big deal. But that is a risk that Google could potentially lose things. I've mentioned this before because I do keep a lot of data in Google because I use it for my business. And I mitigate that by using my Synology and hold on. Here we go. I'll share it right here. I did build a new one because I had problems with an old one. So this is an old one. That's why it's got an old date on there. But yeah, I back up everything I have in Google to my Synology. So absolutely is a good way to do it. So Proton Drive is another one. Does Proton Drive work with TrueNAS? Is there an option in here for it? I don't see it in the list. I was kind of focusing on the TrueNAS backups more than anything else because a lot of people, I do a lot of TrueNAS videos, and NAS backups in general are pretty popular right now. And I guess the question would be with Proton Drive, is it really a backup service at all? I've never used it. Yeah, I mean, they have 500 gigs for $10 a month. So you could use, but Proton Drive is trying to compete with Google Drive, if I'm not mistaken. They're not trying to compete in the bulk storage world. The bulk storage world is really right now Backblaze and StorJ, and probably Wasabi to an extent. Wasabi I had a weirder problem with, and I don't know if this is solved, and someone can please let me know if it is. It may not matter to you at all, but for Wasabi, one of the problems I had with it, there wasn't a way that I seen to remove the ability to list all buckets. It always had that ability or it wouldn't work. There was some bucket permission problems when I tried Wasabi, but granted, it's been years since I tried Wasabi. I don't know where Wasabi's pricing is compared to Backblaze either. Do you know if replicated storage it holds XCBG backups allow Zen Orchestra on the other end to access and restore it? Just thinking about offsite disaster recovery for cloud load. Oh yeah, that's actually something I can cover very easily here. Check this out. You may be interested in this. I've covered how to do offsite backups, but if we go here to backup and restore, actually we'll go backups and remotes. There we go. Share this tab. So here is my TrueNAS S3 backup. And that's this server right here. And if I move over to another server, I'm going to flip between some tabs here. There we go. All right. So TrueNAS S3 backup is set up on this instance of Zen Orchestra and on this instance of Zen Orchestra. They're not on the same network. They're not even in the same building. So absolutely, you can simply point this. Matter of fact, you could do this with StorJ. I want to do a test with StorJ. It should work perfectly fine with Zen Orchestra. So you could point your Zen Orchestra at one location and at another. Matter of fact, then you can do your DR testing that way because you're completely a separate, not linked site and go, can I restore from that? So if I go to the restorers on either one of these, I can then restore this. But yeah, they actually can talk to each other. So anything I do on one side can see on the other. That's actually how I do my cloud backups to be able to validate and DR test things in XCP and G. It works really well. MinIO on TrueNAS. I have used MinIO on TrueNAS. I run an MSP giving Sentinel-1 to my customers, but the reseller program needs to be more licensed than I need. I don't really have, that's a business, post that in my business forums. So I understand the question better. What about enabling immutable storage on Backblaze so it can't be deleted so many days or months? Well, and that's exactly what I'm doing here. So if we go into Backblaze, I deleted the files, but they're not deleted because I have the lifecycle settings set to not delete them. The not delete them is solved. They're not deleted. How do you restore them? How do I mass? And let's mount this real quick and throw some files in here, because this is where things are going to get interesting. So let's go here. Let's see. How big is this directory? Not very big. So we're going to run a backup and show what happens. Because this is the part that a lot of people are, I think maybe a lot of people aren't thinking about. So if we go here, we're going to run this backup. Let me show you what's in there. Let's go through the shell. So there's a bunch of files in here. Just a bunch of random screenshots all collected. So whatever the file count is, a few hundred in there. If we go to our actually data protection, let's go ahead and run this job. And it's going to back up all these files. So it's running a backup. And as I pointed out in here, if we go to the bucket and we look at the lifecycle settings, keep versions. I said 10 days. You can set it to whatever you want, but we have it to keep the versions. So all the versions are set up to be kept. Now, if we go and delete all those files, so let's go mount. Just RM star. Okay, all the files are gone. Let's go ahead and run a backup again. Run the backup. The backup just said, hey, delete all those files. And this is the same, one of the things I pointed out earlier. If you were to go into the credentials and someone were to look at your backup credentials, they could do this manually through a command line tool. They would have your key ID. They could reveal your application key ID. They would be able to, run the CLI tool for Backblaze and say, delete everything in the bucket. But Backblaze will protect you because of this. The lifecycle settings completely makes sense. What will not make sense, this is where things get hard. We're using encryption, so you don't get to see any file names. But all these are deleted now. How do I restore them? There's not a mass restore option. There is a download option. Include all hidden files in the version. You can, make a snapshot and download it. You don't have any easy way, though, because there's multiple versions of this file. Which version do you want? The deleted or the not deleted? So one has 0 bytes. One has this many bytes. We want this one. I can one by one grab all of these, but that doesn't scale very well. This is the part I'm kind of confused about, is like, cool, I have retention settings. How do I actually use them in a meaningful way? Is there a script somewhere that someone's wrote? That's the part I'm really confused about. Like, I haven't seen anything and I've been searching for it. You can back up a local MinIO S3 bucket that's local, but then set MinIO to replicate to a remote bucket. Other link sites can instant recover from local replicated data. Yeah, that's a more complicated way, but yeah, that's. TrueNAS doesn't support clusters, so I have no thoughts on TrueNAS clusters. TrueNAS doesn't have clustering. That's not a thing they do. Set up 3 cloud providers and build a RAID between them. Sure. You're using Ceph on Proxmox. I was wondering if I could use MinIO on TrueNAS as a backup instead of Proxmox. I have no idea. I've never tried that. What's the reason TrueNAS still doesn't have a file explorer in the UI and the GUI? They technically, through the apps, you can set up a file explorer. I think it's actually called. I've done a video on it. Where is it at? File browser. I was looking for Explorer. So yeah, you can install file browser, and this will let you do it through a web UI. So it does it. It's not a native built-in. It's something you can add on through the apps. Yeah, Saturday's the new Thursday. If you missed the beginning, it was because I was ill on Saturday. Well, Immutable it's defining Immutable. Immutable has a definition and a use case, because you're just saying the plane at which it was created, the permission levels that it was created are one thing, and you have one higher level permission that grants immutability, essentially. But back to kind of the topic at hand here that I just wanted to set up the scenario for. How do we deal with this? There's not any easy way that I've found at all to actually execute on those versions. I mean, great. These have lock settings and bucket details that we can set to compliance. We can set the retention period, all the features you want. But the function of actually restoring these is actually pretty hard. There's not any easy way to do it. Now, the easiest way, I think, to do it, the best I can tell, is going through, and I found some kind of scripting ideas, not my specialty, by the way, but it looks like there's a way you could probably write a script from the CLI that reaches out, finds the latest version of all the files and puts them back, which might be the easiest solution on there. So that's if someone were to nuke a bucket, that seems like the way to put it back. But it just seems odd to me that they don't have inside of StorJ or Backblaze a way to say revert to yesterday. That's what's kind of missing from here. A complete, like, go back to here, go back to this point, restore all files back to the last good version. And yeah, that's just not there. Matter of fact, the only thing it really has here is like a hide version. I guess there's just no way to do it through web interface. That's where the real problem is. There's a way to do it. It's just all command line. So it's interesting. Are you aware of options for client-side encryption for TrueNAS? Interestingly, with TrueNAS, when you're setting up the StorJ protection, which they call the True Cloud Backup task, the True Cloud Backup tasks exclusively, there is no way not to do this. You have to put a password. When you're setting up a task, and we'll just add a new one real quick, this is not an optional field. You can put a weak password in. it won't object to 1, 2, 3, 4 being the password, but you have to have a password. So it is only encrypted prior to send. No ifs, ands, or buts. That's the only way to do this. For better or worse, not bad. I actually think that's probably for better, because forcing people to put a password in means it's going to be encrypted. With a cloud sync task like this one for Backblaze, it is optional to use remote encryption. There's an option in here, and it's just using rclone crypt to manage the data encryption. It is optional to do file encryption. It is not default, and it is not required. It is, as I said, optional to do. Wow, and thank you very much. It is greatly appreciated. That is you guys competing to give gifts away. Hey, that's awesome. Thank you very much. It's been a fun Saturday for sure. Just don't get in any trouble while I mean, you guys do what you want, but this is a fun little side thing going on. Actually, you know what I like from the way I see it on my side? It's all Christmas colors. The it alternates between green and red for each of these gifts. So so it's like Christmas. But back to the task at hand before I got distracted by all the gift giving. And thank you again just for all the gift giving. I really appreciate it. Have you restored or encrypted SyncThing folder? I haven't tested it yet. Yeah, that works fine. No problem there. Matter of fact, in news of Tom's testing not doing what he's supposed to do, but I was setting this up and I use logseek for everything, which stores everything as plain text files. I did manage to do something stupid. When you're setting up a new bucket in StorJ, we'll share this tab instead. We'll go over here to the dash. Let's make it normal sized. All right, there we go. New bucket. If we create a bucket, sure. Enable versioning. The buckets have an encryption option on the buckets, which I think is kind of cool too. Actually, I chose the wrong option, so it didn't set up the encryption on it, or did it? So it's a dark theme. You have to put in a key in order to view the buckets, and I accidentally deleted that key, which I then was able to get the key back using SyncThing Restore. SyncThing Restore works great. It's definitely really, really handy to do that. If you want to see how the SyncThing Restore works, so it was Tom's notes versions, and I was looking for, I think it was something TrueNAS. Yeah. So I have a few versions of this, and this I was able to restore one of the earlier versions that had the key, because the later version did not have the key, because I overwrote it and didn't realize I overwrote it when I was retyping things. I actually deleted a whole section. But yeah, I love SyncThing's amazing. And it's like my go-to plan for how I do all my real-time file syncing, because I move between my laptop, my desktop, and when I travel, I mostly just use my laptop. But yeah, the SyncThing is like immediately all my files exactly where I want them, able to restore them if I need to for having revisions. And I have a couple NASs in different locations that SyncThing syncs to, so they're always real-time synced. Yeah, I mean, it works for encrypted receive as well. Now, you can't, if you have versioning turned on for encrypted receive, you don't know what you're restoring, so there's no point. Don't turn on versioning if you're using encrypted SyncThing receive. Inversioning doesn't mean anything at that point. I covered that in my video, I think, where I showed all you see is encrypted blobs. So there's not a way to use versioning with the encrypted one. Yeah, SyncThing is crazy. It's stood the test of time. It's been around for a long time, and it just keeps getting better. It's been one of my, favorite open source projects, for sure. One of the things about, I was kind of thinking about this. When you have like a good open source project, they focus on doing one thing really, really well. When you have a lot of these other companies, especially once you hear that they're venture capital backed companies, you run into a different problem with them. And I think the problem is they're like growth at all costs. You must be everything. You have a customer base. How do we pivot that customer base so you can now consume the world and make us more money? And open source projects don't really suffer from that. They try to do one thing and do it well versus these other companies. They start with one thing. Maybe they become successful because they do it well. And then they pivot. They go, we must do all things. Like we started as a SyncThing backup company. Now we're a insurance company because we suddenly have customers. How do we market to all of them? Those weird pivots drive me crazy because they end up just being lesser companies so much of the time. And open source projects are great, like SyncThing. It does one thing. They're focused on doing one thing. They keep doing that thing, and it's wonderful. Like SQLite. They do SQLite very well. Oh, yeah. Vulture capitalism. Absolutely. 100%. The if you're looking for a fun read, I really like some of the stuff that Ed Zitron writes. He talks a lot about the .com economy, and I'm 100% with him. There's this weird perspective sometimes people have that when you're negative on some of these terrible ideas put out by these VC companies that you're anti-tech. And I'm like, no, not at all. I'm very pro-tech. I very like technology. I like how it enhances things. I dislike so much of the growth at all costs .com economy that comes out of these. Hey, Tom, is something that you should be including as enhancements for SyncThing? I don't know what enhancement you're looking for SyncThing. I guess I did a recent SyncThing video, recent within the last 6 months, I believe. I'm not sure what enhancement you're looking for. I'm not using any encrypted, or am I? Hold on. Do I have any encrypted ones? I'm looking to see if I have any of them set up on any of my systems. Nope. Yes, I do. Neat. I forgot I do have one set up that's encrypted. Because I use my web server to sync certain files between me and a friend that I don't want on a VPN, or actually it's with Matt, so it's not really friends, one of my employees. I use the LTS logseek as an encrypted spot. So that I've not had any problems at all with it. So the LTS logseek is actually sitting on a server that runs in, where does that run? That one's in Linode, and it's encrypted. That way, if anyone were to ever get into that Linode instance, I don't have to worry about trusting it. If it were to get hacked, they'd have an encrypted blob. All the passwords are stored locally to decrypt that. And this IP address is just my website IP address. If you went to lawrencesystems.com, it's the same IP address as lawrencesystems.com, if anyone's wondering. A SyncThing relay server. I've never set one up, so I don't have any guide for doing that. I do encrypt everything. For HL15, do you have any issue where the PCI card does not reach a slot at the bottom of the case? I have not run into that at all. Do I follow Lunduk at all? I feel like he's a familiar name, but no, I do not. I do not follow Lunduk. But I encrypt everything at rest. That's very important. And just like I was talking about these TrueNAS backups, which now I got to log back in. The TrueNAS backups, I encourage anyone setting these up. And as I said earlier, if you're adding a new StorJ task, it automatically does, well, forces you, I should say, not automatically, just it won't let you go further without putting a password. Now, it has no restrictions on the encrypt before send password, but it requires it. Thumbs up to requiring it. That's the key. I can't make you have a good password, but at least you have a password. At least you're doing encryption. And by the way, if you're wondering what that looks like when you upload things to StorJ, here's that test bucket. Here is the data. And this is all the data looks like inside of here. It's just encrypted blobs. Does your HL15 have the tear out yourself? Yes. Those are, I think those are tear. Let me look. So I'm curious. Yeah, they're tear out yourself ones. Yeah, the back has a little like punch out metal pieces. Yeah, SyncThing. I might do a video on this because I think this is a clever idea. Using SyncThing for a buddy backup. It's probably the most robust system out there that could possibly be a good buddy backup. I think SyncThing is pretty outstanding for that feature because if you and a friend each had SyncThing running, but you don't want to have, they don't want to have your data and you don't want to have their data in terms of like the ability to decrypt it or see it. So you just set up a SyncThing encrypted link, and each of you have an encrypted link going to the other person. Neither one can see the data, but now you can share data and do the buddy backup. I think SyncThing just really lends itself. It has all the features to do real-time backups and keep them secure. I just think it's a good solution for that. Any opinion on use Backblaze B2 for immutable cold storage? We back up XOA VMs, Synology NAS to Backblaze B2. I mean, I think it's fine to use them. My problem with calling them immutable is the restore process is hokey. That's the biggest problem I have with the restore process. So if we look at my TrueNAS cloud test, for example, you know, it's set to immutable, but if someone gets a hold of the keys and they delete them, restoring is not an easy task. There's ways you could script this from the command line, but there's not any way to do it through the UI. So that's the challenge right here is how do you restore from a immutable disaster where a threat actor got your API key and purged everything. The nice thing is from a threat scenario, great. They purged it, but you had lifecycle settings on your bucket. So if we look at the bucket and we look at the lifecycle settings, we are saved from our lifecycle settings from losing these files, except I have to manually restore them. That's not great. Well, it's tedious. Yes. I don't, I'm trying to remember. There's not really, they didn't send out like different reviewer units. It's a little bit of a different scenario than that with the HL15. They sent out early releases because people like me were working with them to build this device. So because as part of the Creator Summit, we were working with them, it's not like they had special ones they sent to people who reviewed them or anything like that. We were working to design it. So there's revisions they did for things. SyncThing is a real-time syncing. So it's not like Clonezilla or rclone. It's a real-time synchronization tool. My currently running TrueNAS core stable. Will a core backup file work on a fresh scale install? I think so. I haven't tested on the 2310. They have a migration path on their site, and they update it every time they have a new version. So just look at the migration listed on their site for how to migrate. But I'm pretty sure the answer is yes. Ooh, I don't know. Organizing photos is hard. Deduplicating them is hard. Anything cloud is not immutable. Even Microsoft delete prod days. Yeah, that's a whole different problem. So yeah, you have Backblaze as part of your DR recovery only. It's just the worry that if someone gets the API key to your Backblaze and does a purge, your lifecycle savings save you, but they don't actually make it easy to get all that back. Yeah, our clone has a syncing feature. If you change your lifecycle to 1 or 0, will the immutable flags get cleared? What if your account is canceled or someone requests a Backblaze account deleted? Oh yeah, you could definitely you're at a different permission level. So you have API permissions. That's what you put in your services, like your TrueNAS box for backups. Then you have the account. Someone could easily go in here and delete the account. You delete the account, you delete the account. So if someone gets a hold of your Backblaze account, it's done. Game over. Someone goes in here and says, we're going to go ahead and delete this account, or someone goes in here and purges and makes this bucket go away, you're done. Game over. You better have another plan. Have you used SyncThing for HA setup, like 2 instances of a self-hosted app? It's going to depend on the app. It depends on the app of whether or not that'll actually work. Probably not in most circumstances. When you have high availability set up for applications, there are mechanisms that the application has to be aware of to get the synchronization to work. In some instances, it may work because the application's fine with a file being changed on the fly and it's not going to break something. But most systems, when they're high availability, they have their own synchronization method that allows that to work. So the application is aware of how the data is being synced. SyncThing is not built on rsync. It's actually its own protocol. They've documented, they wrote it all from the ground up. That's one of the reasons it's so interesting is they really just said, let's reinvent syncing, and they did. So it's not really based on rsync. It is much more, it's a lot more in depth, I would say, than rsync. And rsync's great. Don't get me wrong. Not knocking rsync at all. Yeah, I don't run that many apps on my TrueNAS box. Most of the time, I only run a couple things on my TrueNAS, and it's the things I run on my TrueNAS are things that make sense to me to run on TrueNAS. Matter of fact, I was just updating my TrueNAS today. These things all need to be updated. But for example, rsync, SyncThing, and MinIO are all running on my TrueNAS because that's where they store their data. So having them on my TrueNAS and where that data is stored is the same place. So these applications make sense to me to run on TrueNAS. Because why would I run them somewhere else and then have them connect to TrueNAS? Why not have them run natively on TrueNAS where they're actually saving all their data? So what's the real solution for a true DR recovery that isn't on site? probably just having a plan to deal with the scenario. There's a way to deal with that scenario I mentioned. It's understanding some CLI tricks to make that work. Having some type of CLI script that will go through and restore the last version of all the files. It's kind of maybe I'm overthinking it, and please let me know if I am, but I feel like threat actors taking an API key and purging your data is not an uncommon threat scenario. Threat actors are getting more advanced, and I think that's just something they are likely to do. And hence, that's why it's like, well, you should have a way to mitigate that. How do you backup buddy with SyncThing? Wouldn't sync backup ransom data encryption? Oh, yeah. You have to have your own mitigations against that because that is a problem. But for example, in TrueNAS, let's go to my data set. So here's my snapshots for SyncThing. I have how often, hold on, let me see how many often they're running because I can't remember now. I'll know in a second when it loads. So here's all my SyncThing snapshots. These snapshots will protect you from the ransomware because all these different versions I can revert back to and it will restore. I can roll back this to this version. So that is the ransomware protection. It's not just one piece of protection. It's backups are done in layers. So this layer is how all my SyncThing data is protected for 2 weeks of snapshots. But then if you have a backup buddy, it'll start sending the bad backups over to your backup buddy for sure. So you are still potentially facing the problem of, does your backup buddy have a snapshot scenario where they're snapshotting the other side of it? Because if someone gets a hold of your TrueNAS system and are logged into your TrueNAS, they could just purge everything out of your TrueNAS. Nothing you can do to stop them if you lose the credentials to your TrueNAS. Less likely, though, for them to do that because ideally, and actually statistically, how ransomware gets on people's systems. It's not like the threat actors are logging into TrueNAS that often. Most of the time, unless people are reusing passwords, and please tell me none of you are doing this, what happens is you click a link, you download something, you load something on your computer, whatever that may be, and you have shares on that computer. Someone will then inevitably get into those shares and start using your permissions, you as a user, your permissions to delete or change all that data. Hopefully your permissions and logins are not the same as your TrueNAS. So your TrueNAS being a separate login from the login you use for your SMB share, then you're fine because now you can just go to TrueNAS and revert to the snapshot and life is good. And now you've put things back to where they were. Yeah, I definitely don't use the same password for everything. Yeah, the number of people still not using password managers blows me away. It is one of those, yeah. It's that's a whole nother problem. TrueDR plan, always pull backups, have versions enabled, remote repo, also 3-2-1 backup plan. Yeah, just it's having a series of layers. And then I think one of the best things you can do is have one more copy of your data offline. Have a server, and I'm probably going to do a video on this topic, maybe show you how you can take a server and use something like once a week where you use wake on LAN to wake on LAN your server, do a sync of it, and shut it back off. It becomes one more layer of abstraction because the likelihood a threat actor will know that you're doing that. They will maybe know that they see a backup that happens. They find your backup jobs and they say, hey, this backup job happens on Saturdays. but they'll try to log into that backup server and they'll find it unavailable because it's not Saturday and it's offline. And you have a script that turns it off after it does its backup. Maybe they wait till Saturday for that backup. Maybe they're patient, but not always. Yeah. That's, there are scenarios to kind of mitigate against that. I don't do it right now as automated as I could. I do have offline stuff. I have servers that I just don't turn on. I turn them on once in a while and I back up. Just so I have some points in time when I ran these backups and then the server sits off for several weeks. I have so many redundant copies of my data across 3 locations that I don't worry about it as much because each of those locations has a TrueNAS and each of those locations has a copy of all the data. Each of those has snapshots. I don't know how much more I need, so I don't run that backup as much as I could. It just comes down to, it all comes down to budget because I can keep making more copies and then you start up a whole scenario where you have a rotating array of servers you turn off. But then you're thinking, how many servers do I need? What's my budget? It's really interesting. So we had a incident where a threat actor got into and didn't know what TrueNAS was, I guess. I don't know. They thought TrueNAS was a backup system. TrueNAS was actually running their VDI storage. So they had a series of XCP and G servers, and their TrueNAS system was the target storage for that, for all the VDIs. And they just deleted the TrueNAS box. So whoops, deleted all their VDIs. Didn't really do a good job of encrypting things. They just deleted everything, which then created a different problem later because they had to restore. Now, the good news is that's a good news, bad news. It's such a sad scenario. Basically, they had another TrueNAS that they had all the data on, but it also had the same username and password. So despite us telling them, we think threat actors are in your system and logged in, they logged into the other TrueNAS. The IT people started trying to do a restore, and the threat actors logged in behind them and deleted it. So that was the thing. It was a mess. But yeah. Yeah, Wake on LAN's such an easy way to do this. But yeah, there's always fun when you're dealing with all these backups and thinking about all the scenarios. Especially because most of the scenarios people run into is that they clicked on a link. That's where most of this starts. I see people so worried about IoT and everything else. If you start looking through what caused all the problems or where, the source, if you read through a differ report, what's the source of how this ransomware threat actor got in? There's, for more complicated and larger companies, definitely unpatched Fortinet, unpatched Avanti VPN, unpatched Cisco's, unpatched systems sitting at the edge frequently are a problem. But for smaller businesses, it's always phishing links. It's just like phishing links all the way down. Almost every ransomware event is phishing links, except the only ones that aren't phishing links are malvertising campaigns. Those are as prolific now as the phishing links. It's either malvertising or phishing links. Take your pick. Those are the 2 primary things that happen to small businesses that get them in that scenario. Very consistently too. The malvertising campaigns, Angry IP Scanner, man, that is a really popular malvertising campaign. That one is really hot right now and has been for a while. I thought it would die down, but it seems to keep popping up. It's been since last year since I've been on it's been all year. First live stream. Actually, no. Didn't I go? I went live on the 1st, I think. Let me look. I feel like I did a live stream on the 1st. Yeah, I did a Happy New Year on the 1st. So that was Wednesday, and then I was not well. Oh yeah. There's I I like how Cory Doctorow puts it. He talks about the use of ad blockers and how these ad companies know that they're so bad that 90% of people are using ad blockers. It's an incredible percentage of people using ad blockers and tracking blockers. And it's felony contempt of business model. I just thought it's a fun turn of phrase. Cory Doctorow said when I was reading about that, I was like, yeah, that makes sense. Felony contempt of business model. Yep. Oh yeah, honey, dude. People, I never understood, and I should have looked into honey. I always assumed it was something shady. Turns out it was, but I always avoid browser extensions. I only put in the absolute minimum number of browser extensions and never anymore. I think the part people have a really hard time wrapping their head around is the reason a password manager works as a browser extension. The reason the password manager is able to see what password you typed in and say, would you like me to save that password, is because browser extensions get permission to all data that is in your browser. So if it's not a password manager and it decides I'm Honey and I'd like to see more data, it can. If you would like to rewrite a URL like Honey was to steal a code or change an offer code or a referral link, it can do that too. Browser extensions are extremely powerful by design. I avoid them unless they're needed. I do use Bitwarden because I use Bitwarden as my password manager. That's where the browser extensions start and stop for me. I'm using Bitwarden. I mean, I use uBlock is the other one I use, but that's it. There's not other browser extensions installed. I see these people with like 10 browser extensions. I'm like, security risk. Yeah, it's statistically improbable with your setup that that would happen. Legal Eagle did a good video on Honey, and because he's suing him. I think the Legal Eagle video is nice. It's short, it's concise. If you want a more in-depth one, I can't remember the name of the YouTuber now. But if you type in Honey scam, he's one of the top results. He did a great job of diving deeper into it. Yeah, I don't use any of the dark mode extensions. I just avoid all the extra extensions. Even they may feel convenient, but convenience how they get you. Oh, you know what? I think you're right. I am using, no, it's not a plugin. I'm using, look at my plugins, manage extensions. Is there another one in here? Yeah, I do have TubeBuddy installed. That's the one other extension. Now you're using vidIQ. I use TubeBuddy, but they do the same thing. If you're a YouTuber, those are both vidIQ and TubeBuddy are tools that will give you information about videos and are kind of helper applications. When you're uploading a video, they help you fill everything in and give you some stats. So. Yeah, I like TubeBuddy. They're both good. I've not compared the two recently. I bought like a long TubeBuddy had a sale. I bought a subscription for some time into the future to get a better price. Some deal they had like 2 years ago. What browser you use? I use Chrome for business and Firefox for personal. Yeah, people have complained about me using Chrome for whatever reason. I just shrug my shoulders going, I'm using Google for my business. So I use Chrome for my business because it integrates well and does what it's supposed to do. I haven't had any particular problem with it. I don't like where they're going. Someone will go, aren't they changing stuff? Yeah, but it's one of those ain't broke, don't fix it. The other problem I have, Privacy Badger, I want to look into. I see people mention that because one other thing I want to poke at a little more. Well, besides Privacy Badger, what was I going to say? My train got derailed. No, back to other browsers, and besides Chrome directly and Firefox, I don't know that I trust the other browser companies to constantly be up to date as Chrome and Firefox are. Because the problem is, whenever there's a threat, Google is backing the Chromium project, so things are downstream from Chromium. Google backs Chromium, then Chrome is built off Chromium. All the other ones are built off Chromium as well. What is their ability and their pipeline to build and iterate fast enough when there's a release? So we have a Chromium update because a bug was found that's a security problem. That gets pushed into Google Chrome. Google Chrome pushes updates really fast. How fast, what's the delta between how fast the other browsers that are also Chromium based before they push the updates? And does their custom coding introduce any extra problems or undo any of those mitigations? That's one of those things right now. We have firewalls to protect the outside world from getting in, but the browser always goes right through that firewall and becomes your threat surface. So when you're thinking about the browser as your biggest threat surface, whether it's downloading a phishing link, it's downloading a malvertising campaign, or someone finds an exploit in the browser by going to a website that executes some type of code that you didn't expect it to do, that's where the threat model is. So that's why I'm like, okay, well, Brave is Chromium. I know, but my point is, how fast is Brave iterating? Are they iterating faster than Chrome? I know they're all based on it because Microsoft is also iterating off the Chromium engine. Each one of these is sourcing off the Chromium engine. How fast are they iterating off of it? There's a new Chromium release. I know how fast Google does it because Google's one and the same here. Google finds a problem in Chromium, they upstream it to Chromium, they pull it into Chrome. This happens very fast. So it's kind of a interesting, how fast does it happen? I don't know. I'm not done like I don't know if this is easy to do. How fast does it happen? How well is that tracked? I stay away from Brave because they're doing some type of crypto thing. Once I know a company's doing crypto thing, I generally stay away from them. Matter of fact, that's StorJ. Just because they're doing some crypto stuff, it took me. StorJ's been around for years, and I've seen them. I've had people ask questions, but I knew they were doing some crypto stuff. And once I see a company's doing crypto stuff, I just go, I probably don't want to be involved with them. Yeah. It'd be a short video. It's like, don't run browser extensions. So that would be my video on that. I'm trying to figure out how to do, though, a video on better understanding threat models, because there's constantly Chrome extensions. There was recently, and I just posted about this the other day. Let me find it. Somewhere in my posts. Because this is a good write-up. Chrome extension compromised in holiday attack campaign. If a Chrome extension gets compromised, and this is why any Chrome extension you have needs to be part of how you look at your security posture, it became the attack extension. Yeah, business plus crypto is always sus. It, and this was a let me find the write up on this. I remember when someone pointed this out a while ago, and Brave apologized for this, but talk about, you know what? Let's bring it full circle. This is the combination of honey style attack. This is just like the honey extension. Brave browser found hard coding referral links to partner crypto sites, even if you manually type in the URL. Sound like honey? So you're using the Brave browser, you type in Binance, you'd end up getting redirected to Binance. So yeah. I remember Brave apologized for doing this, and someone pointed out, if I'm not mistaken, Brave is open source, and someone found this in their source code. But yeah, Brave was redirecting people's links, just like honey. Can we go back to Netscape? Yeah. No rug pulls or investment, but yeah, I mean, I don't think I've seen, I don't follow all the Brave news, but this one right here, when they were manually injecting referral stuff, it's been a while since that happened. So I think they learned their lesson, maybe. I don't know. Brave browser apologizes for automatically adding affiliate links to cryptocurrency URLs. I mean, this is what turned me off for Brave, is when this happened. Sorry, folks. They did it. They were doing honey before honey was doing honey. Man, this is an old. This happened a couple of years ago. Privacy browser Brave under fire for violating users' trust. Chromium-based browser Brave has been profiting from redirecting affiliating to crypto companies. Womp womp womp. But I don't know. I don't want to talk about Brave anymore. Browser bashing today. They all suck. Thoughts on Firefox? Yeah, if Google breakup stops funding Firefox, Firefox probably dies. There's no thoughts to have on it. there's like, it's gonna suck. I think the original sin of the internet is really that we just borrowed the business model from TV and television of put ads and everything. And that's, yeah, it's just broke everything by putting ads and everything and making that the funding model. Like, I think if you would have built social media platforms based on people paying for them, I think that'd be better. When the concept of paying for social media didn't seem like a terrible idea to me. Like, hey, cool, I put a few dollars a month into this subscription and everybody wins. I think there's like a good idea for that. Then you don't have to try to gamify everything to bring ads to the top and garbage content that keeps people on there. You actually could build a system where people just communicate with each other for a fee. And I don't think that'd be terrible, but yeah, that's me. The cat, that ship has sailed. Maybe there'll be a new internet that actually does that. So that's not the current state of things. Yeah. If people had a Facebook, 50% of the scammers would just disappear. Yeah. Yeah, Facebook is a disaster. Facebook is, I guess, pedaling back on the fact that they started allowing bot accounts or something like that. I don't know. I don't follow all the Facebook BS. It it's like an amusing side note in my day, but certainly not the topic of where I want to be. Yeah, let's move on to a better topic. Speaking of new internet, you ever play around with LoRa? I think that is on my to-do list. I think that's a pretty cool technology, and the LoRa system is really interesting. Meshtastic is specifically the project I'm looking at. I actually seen a couple other companies building things on LoRa that are going to connect to, what do you call that? Like Home Assistant. There's a lot of neat ideas kind of around the LoRa system. So yeah, I think it's a fascinating technology. I like the long range of it. I want to play around with some Meshtastic. I've seen there's maybe a couple people in my area using it. So I love, so when there's these new really deeply nerdy technologies, like in the 90s with BBSs, or 80s to 90s. I didn't really start in the BBS world until the 90s. But you met other nerdy people because the bar of entry was really high. You had to be a pretty super nerd to get on there. Therefore, you met other super nerds. So I'm excited with LoRa because who's playing with it? Super nerds. What does that mean? I'm going to meet other super nerds that I get to nerd out with. So I'm exactly thinking it's a great concept. You'll find all my socials on lawrencesystems.com. You'll find that I load them up in a tool called Buffer and send out data. I don't spend a ton of time on all the platforms because that would be a lot of time. So there's not a ton of time I spend on any given platform, but I have a Blue Sky, Twitter. I still have Facebook accounts. What else do I have? I think those are the only ones I'm on right now. I spend more time on my forums than anywhere else. I spend time in, here's a tier of where Tom spends his time. I'm on forums for myself. I'm on forums for other places, the TrueNAS forums, maybe the Zen Orchestra forums, maybe even the Level 1 Text forums. I then eventually will wander through some social media in the morning and scroll for a few minutes before I realize it's an awful bunch of people posting stuff there. Twitter's become particularly more horrible than ever for just irrelevant garbage. The number of DMs I get on Twitter for crypto scams on a daily basis are just outstanding. Blue Sky, just not much there. I don't follow enough people, I guess, to make it meaningful. And Facebook is its own cesspool of just garbage content. Do you think it's worth to set up a separate database system log server? I don't know enough. I separate database system log server. I don't know. I'm missing some context. Did you have an earlier question? You bought the stuff for Meshtastic, but haven't used it yet. Ran your own BBS. That's awesome. Oh, IRC in the late 90s, early 2000s was definitely way better. Yeah, there's a few people. The amateur radio people, the ham operators definitely seem to be into it. I don't have any good recommendations for self-hosted document management. Nextcloud breaks too much. That's the problem I've run into. It seems like when there's updates, there's breakage. What was the first experience you had on the internet? Was it your BBS systems? Probably, yeah. Tom, LinkedIn. That's the other one I'm on. I forget about that. I do post on LinkedIn too. Same thing. I load them all up. I mostly post memes on LinkedIn because I'm amazed at the number of the engagements I get on LinkedIn memes. I don't know. It's got me a lot of people following me. I'm like, I'm not even serious about LinkedIn. I just post BS a lot and people like it. I think Discourse is a platform you don't own. It's not indexed by Google at all, so it becomes a discoverability problem. Discourse is a chat system that should never be used as forums. Matter of fact, speaking of LinkedIn posts, on numerous occasions, Tom has ranted. I probably can find. Let me look at my posts. I ranted recently about this. If I can find, I post probably too much stuff. Here, I'll share it with everyone. Whoops, that is not. Oh man, I got to re-scroll. By the way, LinkedIn is absolute garbage for discoverability. You can have, without the link for how something got to LinkedIn, but I've ranted before on LinkedIn. I'll just throw this as a link for anyone who wants to see it or see it. My LinkedIn posts are all public, so you don't have to sign up for LinkedIn. But essentially what I say is Discord is a group chat app, not a forums replacement, and insert rant why. So I am very much a anti using Discord for a purpose it's not well suited for. Speaking of TrueNAS forums, it seems like there are some smart people, but it seems to be some entrenched dogma about ECC and spinning drives down. I think ECC is overrated. You don't need it. It's a nice have, but not needed. Oh, I'm on Reddit too. That's right. Yeah, maybe you're asking about a syslog server from the earlier question about it. External syslog servers are great. You run 5 instances of Nextcloud and haven't had issues in 2 years. It depends. If you try to run it, if you run it using like Jay from Learn Likes TV did a video about the all-in-one script, that one works. Like that script has been maintained well and done a good job. But there's, if you run it in any type of like TrueNAS, for example, it just breaks a lot. If you run it, there's a couple of scenarios where, like if you do a native install, I think the other one uses a Docker install. I think the Docker installs work good, but the native installs are broken. I do have a Discord for chat. I don't go in there enough. Oh, Discourse, the message board. Yeah, Discourse. Okay. Yes. Did I make a mistake? Okay. I was wrong. What open source systems are there for internal chat systems? Matrix, Rocket Chat, or Nextcloud come to mind. I guess any of those are fine. I don't really use any of them. The problem is my companies, one runs on Google, but I never use the chat built into that. My other company runs on my CNWR is a Microsoft Office 365 setup. We don't use Teams because it sucks. So we use Slack. There's open source ones out there. Our biggest reason we use Slack is we don't have to deal with hosting it, and we have a ton of integrations in a Slack. So moving them all would be a pain in the butt, or sometimes just not an option. We have a lot of the features of the company are integrated into Slack, and it would probably not be easy to get those moved into Rocket Chat. What are some genuine cloud services you prefer over on-prem? Email hosting. I think I used to be a mail server admin for years, and I got tired of fighting with it. I'm overwhelmed with the logging visualization stacks, Graylog, Loki, Grafana, Telegram, etc. How do you keep things simple, stupid? By not using as many. I don't know. People like, if I were someone who had to report to management as opposed to being management, management loves pretty graphs. So I would spend a lot of time on pretty graphs. I'm an action person who doesn't have to report to anyone. And the pretty graphs don't always provide me the most actionable intelligence. People spend so much time customizing, and I'm not saying there's not a reason to at times to use something like Grafana and Loki and tie all these data together to that. But most of the time I just don't need that much data. So that's how I get away from not doing all of those. So another vote for the Docker install. So you run Nextcloud in a custom configured, in a clustered configuration where we run the databases and Gilray cluster config on a proxy. Okay, so you got a much more advanced setup for Nextcloud than your average install. Does Ubiquiti have certificates, and how necessary are they? Well, necessary is a fuzzy one because I don't have any Ubiquiti certificates. So yes, you can get Ubiquiti certified. No, I don't have any. And we do large scale Ubiquiti installs. So the fact that I'm able to install large projects, some of the projects we've done are in the up to $500,000. I think just Ubiquiti equipment, not like the whole project, but there was about $450,000 worth of Ubiquiti equipment. The one I did at the Camel Factory was around the $300,000 mark of equipment and things like that. So we've done a lot of large installs with Ubiquiti, and I don't have any certs, so I'm going to go with them not being as necessary. It's a harder question for me to answer, though. Tell me why I shouldn't do layer 3 routing on my switches without mentioning firewall rules, as this can be done via ACL. I do it if you need it. If you want to do layer 3 routing, then do layer 3 routing. I don't tell people not to do layer 3 routing on the switch. I usually tell people not to route storage. That's a different. If you have a reason to do layer 3 routing at the switch, then you have a reason to do layer 3 routing on the switch. But you should always look for strategies that don't involve routing your storage. That's really where I preach a lot more. My real complaint about UniFi, can't seem to install certs on the controllers to protect them. I use a reverse proxy with the UniFi controller, so that's my solution. Tom, being the mostly certless wizard, what certs do you prefer to see in a T1, Tier 3 in your company? We don't have strong policies on that. I'll just throw it out there. There's not the problem I run into. It's experience always seems to beat certifications pretty consistently. I don't have a solution for that. The technology moves fast, certifications move slow. It's nice to see that people have their basic CompTIA certs. At least I know they studied and did something. But also, you frequently, and there's some people just are too good at regurgitating answers without understanding the context. And I don't know how to sort those people out from the people who worked hard and actually did it. There's not an easy answer. That's one of the problems we face in tech. How would you handle a mixed environment? Enrolling new certs, half use Acme, half use Microsoft. They don't integrate well with other worlds. It just becomes a complicated setup. I don't know what answer you're looking for there. We have customers with complicated setups sometimes. I mean, there's not like a magic to handling it. It's like when you have these constantly mixed environments of mess. We inherit an environment where we try to homogenize as much as we can to make it more supportable, but sometimes they have disparate systems that need separate maintenance schedules. Yes, that is the ideal way to do it, is to multi-home your file shares. Yes. I mean, high-end switches are not going to add, if you have a really fancy Arista switch or a fancy, was it Cisco Nexus and some of those ones, probably isn't going to make much of a difference because they're going to be really fast. Yeah, certificates, I don't know about needed to get in the door, because like the folks over at Huntress have talked many times about, they don't even require a degree to work at Huntress. I think you need to generate a new cert in TrueNAS. I'm usually, if you go into TrueNAS certificates, I think you just generate a new one and swap it. And when you generate the new one, just set it way in the future. If you're doing self-signed certs. So if you go to certificates, you would just add a new certificate. Well, that's yeah, then you can build off this, and you would just build a new certificate and certificate authority, and then set the date way in the future, and then swap your web UI to use that cert. HexOS has some kind of application that allows friends to use each other's NASs to offset backups. They are going to, in the future, have that. They do not have that today. That is a future feature. We talked earlier in the live stream about doing it with SyncThing would probably be the best way to do it. Maybe I'll do a video on a potential way to do it with SyncThing. I've worked with people with certs, but lacking common sense. Oh yeah, that happens. I've been meaning to ask you this. Ceph documentation insists the storage has its own subnet. Does this go against your storage? No, not at all. Having a separate subnet for storage is exactly what I've been preaching. So it's the opposite. That I say, they call it public-private inside of Ceph. So Ceph has the public side, which is what will interface with whatever's talking to Ceph, whether it's through a share, NFS, SMB share, etc. That's what they refer to as the public side of a Ceph network. The private side of a Ceph network, the way you are when you're architecting your Ceph system, is where all the other nodes talk to each other to synchronize it. So if we have 3 hosts in our Ceph cluster, those 3 separate hosts are going to use that network to synchronize whatever those erasure coding settings are, or to replicate that data. So this is absolutely the way it should be done. The public side is only the interface side for whatever service is using Ceph. I went to school with guys with Cephs getting certificates. If I didn't go the way of the book said it should, he was totally lost. Yeah, it just varies a lot with people. Oh, also, thank you very much for the donation. It is greatly appreciated. I have used your videos in the past to set up my own Plex server and keep getting alert about my certificate. Yeah, I mean, a certificate, it's either, if it's self-signed, then you're going to get a self-signed error. That's just the nature of self-signed certificates, unless you do something like a reverse proxy. Would you hire with would you hire someone with no formal IT experience that has shown interest in tech via Homelab network? I have hired people that way. So it's not a question. It is something I have done numerous times over the years. I mean, they didn't. I think Eric is probably one of my really good examples. He's one of the staff I've talked about before. Eric worked at a flower shop. Eric now does stuff in data centers and understands routing at a high level. There are definitely people who I have hired that have kind of worked their way through starting out doing menial stuff and worked their way up to being a higher end tech. So absolutely. Switch or mesh? I don't understand a mesh connection because I always connect all my network cards through a switch. So I don't know what a mesh connection. Are you talking about direct? I mean, pretty much in any enterprise storage setup we do is going to have a switch involved. And more specifically, MLAG, multi-link aggregation between chassis is really important when you're doing an enterprise setup as well. So once we get into the larger setups where people have the budget for those things, that's on there too. Switches actually don't fail too often. So it's not like I think every single situation needs it, but it's nice to have if they do fail that you have that type of setup. What's your current go-to drives for the home NAS? I really like the ones from Server Part Deals. I've been getting a lot of the Seagate Exos ones from there. The prices are great. And I didn't even know this. I should reach out to them because apparently they use sponsorships. I've been suggesting Server Part Deals for a while. And Wendell from Level 1 Tech did a video about them and has an offer code. But yeah, lots of good deals on Seagate Exos drives. The price is great. The warranty's solid. Yeah, I was sick on Thursday, so Vlog Thursday is on Saturday. This is correct. Yeah, I talked about Eric on your channel as well when me and you talked about getting into tech. And yeah, he's been one of my examples because some of the other people were more pursuant into tech. Like I hired people that were interns from college. Like they had college courses and found their way to working for me. There's actually there's some other techs that work for me that worked not in tech, but wanted to get into tech that they ended up level 1 help desk, but they're happy there, I guess. So oh, I like this. Flower shops are good experience for spine and leaf networks. Oh, you've been following me since Eric was an intern. Yeah, he's in some of the old videos. If you dig around old enough on my channel, you'll find an Eric. We're still friends. He works for CNWR now, which is the IT side of the company. Do I have worry about my Tesla spying on me? Yes. Yes. I'd rather someone who shows personal keen interest in IT. Yes. Passion drives more than anything else. What's your opinion on the UniFi 7 series? The latest release claims to fix IoT and other issues, but still have a bad taste. I don't have enough IoT junk to know. That's my problem. I've talked to my friends who have IoT things, and they seem to have problems, but they had easy mitigations for it, so they didn't find it a big deal. I forget what box they checked, and someone covered this before. Let me see if it's in here. I don't remember what they checked. Anyways, I do have the like the Enterprise 7. Oh, and I just need to plug it in somewhere else, but I've had no problems with it. It works great, but I have no IoT things that seem to have any issues. I lack IoT devices because I don't like them. I guess I have things I could connect, but I just won't connect because I don't care. I have a Sony receiver. I guess you can call it an IoT, but I don't plug it into the internet. The things on my network are Chromecasts, and the Chromecast seem to have no problem. But the Chromecast is a pretty advanced device compared to a washing machine or something like that. I think there's actually Wi-Fi on my washing machine. I don't have it turned on. Like, I have no interest in ever doing that, but it exists. Because it just came. I don't. Maybe you can buy a washing machine without Wi-Fi, but I think I seen an option about this. I'm like, I can think of no reason I want that to be a thing. Of course, I think my wife, she called it Wi-Fi, but I have a feeling it's Bluetooth. I don't know. I'll have to go look. She bought a humidifier, and she's like, there's a separate network. My wife doesn't even have the passwords to the network where I don't want things on. And she's like, I'm trying to connect this humidifier to the Wi-Fi. I'm like, why? It's a humidifier. It does not need to be on the Wi-Fi at all. There's not a reason I can think of to do this. Yeah, keeping all that stuff on just a separate network, it makes more sense. I've never used Go hard drive, so I have no opinions on them. I just know I found server part deals, and maybe me and Wendell talked about it. I can't remember who I talked to that first turned me on to them. I've ordered a lot of drives from them, and I've been really impressed. And every one of them, because the reason I'm impressed is, one, the shipping was fast, the price was reasonable, the warranty was good, and none of them died. All the factors that you want. And I mean, I've been buying drives from them for 2 years, so I haven't had to return any. When switching to a UniFi controller on a VPS from a local controller, should the management VLAN on the UniFi switch be set to a VLAN that has WAN access? So if you're switching a UniFi controller from a virtual private server to a local controller, should the management VLAN? I mean, if it's local, you could block internet because the devices are talking locally to it, so it doesn't need WAN access at that point. So I think you could block access to it, and it should work fine. The only problem I think you would run into is if you put that controller on there, how's it going to get updates if it doesn't have WAN access? How are you going to update that controller locally if you blocked WAN access? Yeah, everything has Wi-Fi of varying quality these days. I see more people like server part deals. Yeah, my smart TV is not connected either. From local to VPS. I read that backwards up here. From a local controller. All right. Yeah, I mean, if it doesn't, well, if it doesn't have WAN access, how is it going to get out to the internet where the VPS is? That's not a. I mean, maybe it's really obvious, but if you block WAN access, how do you expect the UniFi to talk to the controller? So Go Hard Drive is another one. I don't have any affiliates or offer or association with any of these people. So, so whichever one works for you, let's pull up Go Hard Drive. Desktops. Let's do some price shopping here. White label. I don't know about white label. I go for brand name hard drives. I also need something bigger than that. Hold on. Steam TV, 16 terabyte. There we go. Well, this is weird. What is a max? They have some weird drives on here. Max digital data. That's a Seagate. That looks exactly like a Seagate. Are they rebranding drives? Hold on. This is weird. Now people got me curious here. I mean, the price isn't bad. Oh, these are sold out. I was like, this is a really good price. But that's sold out. Let's go back. These are sold out. Hold on. Where's the checkbox for don't show me things that are sold out? In stock. There we go. Doesn't matter what you don't have. Gen 14 SATA drives 179. Here's some Seagate ones, 179. They're the Dell EMC Seagates. Let's compare that to this one here. I just want to see the bottom of the drive again. Yeah, that has the same pattern on the bottom. So it's got to be that right there, the way the little curve is. The way the little curve is on that. So they're the rebranded Seagates for 159. Interesting. I don't know, man. I'm jury's out on these. Their rebrand is weird. Okay, so it is rebranded that. Okay. I mean, call it what you want as long as I get the warranty and as long as the company stands behind the warranty. Have you tested zone-based firewall and UniFi yet? I've only poked at it a little bit. I haven't spent a lot of time testing it, but I plan to because it's a feature that I think is exactly as you're pointing out here, much needed because UniFi firewall rules are just overly convoluted. And I think this is going to be one of those things where this will help make them more mainstream because why is it so hard to set up the rules? Why do they have this weird way of doing it? Like they took the worst way of doing it and then just implemented it. Like just make it easier. Oh, it says Seagate right above the pick. I missed that. Huh. Somewhere. Anyways, we know it's a Seagate. It's a Max Digital Data Seagate. Are the UniFi zone rules better than the way pfSense does it? Jury's out on that one there. I don't know that it's better. Not until I really start using it can I answer that question. It's one of those things. It's definitely different. And the fact that it's different is the first problem. Like, is it different in a good way? I don't know. I think the pfSense rules I've been using for so long, I like them, but they're also pretty clear to me versus the UniFi rules are so new that they're not clear. I'm pulling it up right now if anyone's wondering what I'm doing in the background. It's under here. Here we go. So this is what they look like. I still think these are a little confusing the way they do it, but at least you can view the policies and filter form. I think this is good. I don't know how this is going to scale to larger networks where there's a lot of different rules. I don't know. I got to play with it some to really, like, the jury's out. In concept, I like it because it improves over what they had. Is it superior to other systems? I don't know. Part of the image of the drive. Got it. That's what I was overlooking. Anyways, we moved on to a new topic. Oh, derp. It's right there. I was looking at the zoomed in one. You're right. If you're not on the zoomed in one, it does say Seagate right here. So yeah, here it says Seagate when you're. I'm blind. I was looking for the word Seagate, not an image. I guess the Washington you could have an announcement when it's done, or look up that loading laying was finished. Yeah, I guess. I don't know. It's just in terms of, like, is the washing machine done with a load? I like the fact that my washing machine has like a countdown timer. So I put the wash in and it says we'll be done in 53 minutes. So I can simply predict in 53 minutes, I will put the clothes in the dryer. I don't think I need Wi-Fi for that. Just throwing it out there. Like, there's some, I like when technology helps, but there's other times when technology doesn't necessarily make sense to apply. I don't like any rule that asks inbound or outbound. It just gives me source and destination. I migrated to zone-based rules. My EDM Pro works well. I like the way rules return traffic between zones with regards to unified documentation. Don't expect it to get better. They could definitely use some documentation. They're working on putting together a lot of better documentation. That's a nice thing. So I applaud UniFi working towards better documentation. But I need water. I'm going to be right back and we'll continue this. But let me throw my be right back thing. And good morning to people that are just joining. But I'm going to go ahead and throw my be right back because I ran out of water. After being sick, I need to hydrate. So this is Vlog Thursday continued because I was really not well on Vlog Thursday. There we go. Got more water. UniFi has, so we share it. UniFi has deep packet inspection options. Where are they at? Hold on. Until I don't use UniFi, it's firewalls enough. That's under, because here's where it gives all this data. It has all the application traffic data. It's in our insights. Oh, there we go. Yeah. So I like that 60% of the traffic is my my son. And YouTube, most of YouTube is a lot of the traffic on here. So let's 17 for that. What does a week look like? Yeah, you can get some traffic data out of here. It's not amazing, but it works. Google Chromecast. Like I said, I like my Chromecast. It's how we watch a lot of things. Amazon Video. $25 gigs of Netflix. I like that Let's Encrypt just gets blanketed into everything. 40 gigs of Let's Encrypt. My wife uses Facebook, so 9 gigs of Facebook. It's pretty much what my wife does with her phone. She watches Facebook. She watches some YouTube. She doesn't watch me on YouTube. Apparently, she watches some Amazon Prime and then LinkedIn. So yes, it does have some packet inspection. Will it be okay? Yes. Put all your IoT in a separate VLAN and isolate it. Makes sense to me. Oh yeah, there was that post on Reddit about the washing machine sucking up all the data. Oh yeah, the TV. I forgot that that's in there. Whoops. Hopefully that won't get my videos demonetized. Yeah, there's a couple. Oh, these things are still online. Interesting. The Amazon Fire TV. What's using all the data right now? Chromecast usually. Yeah, NTOP NG is kind of the equivalent of the Unified Packet Inspection. That's as close as they come. They're not one-to-one, but yeah, I've done several videos on NTOP NG. I still use it. It works. I still think it's a great tool. Oh man, I do miss the old mechanical timer ones. When we sold the house, my old house, I had to give those up because we sold the appliances with it. We had new appliances at the new house, so some things had to be sacrificed. Can one Wi-Fi router do multiple LANs? Never set VLANs up because I assume would need another AP. In UniFi, they make this easy. So if you're using UniFi, yes, there are devices, there are access points that can do multiple. UniFi is an example of one, so it's not unique to UniFi at all. But if you go to let me share this tab. You look at my Wi-Fi networks. For example, VLAN ID 10 transmits this SSID. So yes, absolutely. So something CTOP that you brought up earlier for monitoring containers. I noticed it was listed as a project that was abandoned when I was looking up different sites. I don't know that abandoned, maybe it's just feature complete, but it hasn't had an update in years. I don't know that it's a bad thing. Sometimes things just work. And maybe it works fine and doesn't need a new release. But yeah, it's been 3 years since there's been an update. But I think the person who maintains it, they're still doing some contributions. So the person that maintains it is still active, which is great. It's been on my to-do list to test it, but I really haven't had time to test it. You know what's interesting is and maybe this will happen in post, if we roll all the way back to the beginning of this live stream talking about backups and cloud backup testing, no one had a solution for the problems I proposed, which is weird. It feels like there should be a solution to this problem. I will have to start poking the cloud companies and ask them to build automated solutions, or maybe I'll build a script and include it with my videos and say, this script will solve this problem. I ended up going down a rabbit hole. I was going to test CTOP, and then I ended up in a rabbit hole of Docker security and some other things. Now I'm closing all the tabs. There we go. All the tabs are closed now. Have you used PC server parts in New Hudson? I don't know what New Hudson is. So without knowing what New Hudson is, I'm going to answer no. Have you ever used NetFlow Graylog? I find using NetFlow with centralized logging more useful than NTOP GNG. Yeah, it's kind of been on one of those, I should set that up and never gotten around to it. Oh, New Hudson, Michigan. Interesting. There's a place in New Hudson. PC servers and parts in New Hudson. Never, you know what? Someone suggested them before, but I have not used them. That's this company here. Where is New Hudson, Michigan? I'll pull a map up. I'm curious how far it is from me. Directions. It is 44 miles from me. So not that far. I should reach out to them. I need to recycle things, and maybe I can talk to them about it. Nope. I've never, I don't think UniFi is doing anything weird with fast roaming. I've never had it have a problem. The number of unresolved issues open on CTOP doesn't make me think it's feature complete. Then just what happened to your EXO release way to do it. How you pass PC devices. Oh, yeah. We chatted on LinkedIn about firewalls. Curious if you've done Wazoo and syslog decoders dashboard. No, I just don't use them commercially. So no, I did a video on it to show people. I went through the trouble setting them up and getting them all working. I ran them for a little while to make sure I was understanding the product so I could do the videos. And when I was all done, I tore it all down because I don't actually use it in production environments. So I quit maintaining it. But now I'm curious about the parts sales company. Maybe I should reach out to them. They're not that far of a drive. This is about 40 minutes from me. Contact us. We're here to help. I've been wanting to do, there's another company I do work with now, but they're out of state. So travel's a lot harder, but a local company might be fun. I just wanted to show behind the scenes what goes on at a refurbisher. I think it'd be a fun video to go to like a server refurbishing company and say, hey, this is what goes on there. Do you prefer Zigbee M2QT or ZHA and HA to set your devices up? Well, here's the thing. I've only ever used one. So if I look at my device integrations, I've only ever used the one I'm using, so I don't have a comparison to switching it. So I'm using I guess what's oh, that's you said Zigbee, not Z-Wave. I like they both begin with Z. I'm using this. It's working and not broken, so I haven't tried anything else. Yeah, one of the reasons I encourage and did the video about Wazoo and Security Onion and those is I want to encourage people to use these because they give you a better idea of how systems that you may encounter commercially work, so you can actually get a better understanding of the underlying technology and take some of the mystery out of it. I think it's great, but yeah, I don't run it in production, so that's kind of where I stop with it. Like it's a great thing to use for learning and understanding, and probably good for your home lab. Most of these have a much harder timing working in the business environments that I work in as a managed service provider. Oh, yeah. Go spend some time in forums or maybe use some ChatGPT. It gets confusing really quickly for me too, because I don't spend as much time. Like home automation is its own deep dive rabbit hole of things that once it works, I kind of like, there's people who didn't like things in my video, like me suggesting I don't like Wi-Fi devices. And I'm like, I don't know what to say. Like I use the things that work and it works well. I have no fears like running updates. We'll go ahead and run it now. Like the updates work well. I don't mind doing them live. Home Assistant's been wonderful, but yeah, there's always a lot of debates on which is the best way to control. What was your initial question about storage? No errors. It was the immutability problem. So one of the things I was talking about earlier was if you have a policy set, and we do, if we go here and we browse the buckets and we can say, is it lock settings? Yeah. We have a forced retention period of 5 days for this. That means if someone from the TrueNAS side deletes the data using the API key, there's a bucket retention setting that says you have to keep this data. The only problem is, how do you deal with data that looks like this? So here's different versions of these files. This is the broken version. This is actually we need to show versions. How do I restore it to the latest file? I don't know that answer because manually and tediously going through thousands and thousands of files is really hard. I don't see any way to do it. So despite having a retention policy, if someone from the API key inside your TrueNAS makes those changes, you have a real problem. And that problem isn't solved by simply setting a retention setting. That means your data got retained, but restoring the data is still an uphill battle. And I thought there'd be an easier way to do it, but there's not. Starting off with a pre-canned tool like Wazoo is better than learning and building it all yourself. Yeah, I'd probably say that because building a whole tool like Wazoo from scratch is quite the undertaking. Observability and SIMs can be daunting if you build it all. Yeah, I think Wazoo gives you a good understanding how a lot of things work in terms of SIM monitoring and security monitoring. I used OSEC years ago in production systems, and I always thought OSEC was cool. Wazoo is a fork of OSEC. It still says OSEC and uses OSEC commands on the back end. It's a cool system. It's a great platform for learning and understanding security a lot better. This is probably why I don't have Zigbee to MQTT. It's a lot more complex to set up. That's probably where Tom stopped. I went with the one that worked first or took the least amount of steps to get my Zigbee stuff working. There is no doubt that that's how I got to use whichever one I'm using. Yeah, for any of, and I mentioned that in my videos where I talked about all of these, is the automation you have to build. That's so if you want it to be go from SIM to SOAR, so you want to do the orchestration part, well, that's more building on top of that. So they're a lot. There's a reason we use some of the commercial products that are out there. It's one of those. It works. the commercial systems out there, like we use Blumera for our SIM at CNWR. It's a popular system because it's easy, it works, it gets the job done, and we don't have to maintain an entire chunk of infrastructure for it. And they do a lot of the notifications and keeping that all up to date. Hey, thank you very much for gifting more memberships, and you have a great day as well. Thank you for joining, man. Both of you guys were just awesome with all of this. I like that it's just red and green. It looks like Christmas when I see all this gifting there. Hey, Tom, love the vlogs. More often than not, I'm traveling somewhere, and I just have one of your vlogs playing in the background over the earphones or lot. Awesome. I'm happy it worked for you. I love hearing that. I don't use either of those, so I don't have an opinion on either one of them. So having not used them means I don't have an opinion on them. That's something more tech people need to embrace, not having an opinion on things they don't use. If only we could start that as a trend. I don't have control over that. We turn on all the options in our store, but we don't have an option to control what they offer. They offer what they offer, and like we're not restricting any of them. So if they have, like when we select a product, the company we use is called Fourth Wall. If it's available on Fourth Wall, it's available through my store. But we don't have any restrictions on like we will only check these boxes. We've talked about doing the printing and fulfillment and shipping. It's just a lot like to do it ourselves. That's why we use an outside company for that. Right now, I only hired one person last year. So right now we have two people that manage the entirety of the Lawrence Systems channel. All the things we do, all the ad deals, all the content, everything that takes to run Lawrence Systems as a YouTube channel is run by me and Matt. So adding an entire shipping department would be a lot. And we don't make enough off the store to really do that. So 100 gifted memberships today. It's like 80% of the people here today have a membership. Thanks to fine folks. Hey, I got no complaints. It's been great. Oh, man. That's interesting. Having used neither of these, this is new information to me. Authentic has a GUI for configuring everything, and Authelia is all CLI based. Interesting. For my Homelab stuff, I don't have a central SSO provider. Everything has a username and password. It's saved in Bitwarden. It doesn't bother me to log into those things. So I don't think much about it. For business wise, we use on the IT side of CNWR, Microsoft SSO for things. That's our authentication and identity provider. It works. It's integrated into much of our stuff. So there's not much. It's just, we not really looked at another one because it would just be too much work. Yes and no. I still have self-hosted Bitwarden for Lawrence Systems, and on the CNWR side, we use the Bitwarden server. Probably not, because of MinIO object storage retention rules, compliance mode, we give you what you want. The problem is the mass restore. It's not that the files don't get deleted. It's how do you do a mass restore? That is the tricky part, is the mass restore. Because and it's not just a StorJ problem. If we go over to the browse files, I gotta log back in. Hold on. But if we go to my login here for Backblaze, as soon as I log back in, I have exactly the same problem. I have a bucket with retention settings, which puts a little asterisk here to let me know all these files were deleted. How do I mass restore to the previous version? I can click on any of the files. This one's 0 bytes. This is the better file. Cool. But yeah, there's nothing in here that I can do. This is interesting though. Huh. It creates an S3 error. It's encrypted file, so no, I'm not worried about people seeing this. I'm curious what happens when I try to download this encrypted file. What does it view as? It just says data. It doesn't know what it is. It's encrypted. Biggest hurdle with self-hosted identity providers is you're competing with something you already paying for, such as G Suite or M365. How do XCP and Jacobs look on the object storage? Like a lot of objects. I can actually probably, here, let me find something I can log into. Hold on, I gotta figure out where where did I put this? It's in there. Not there. That's what they look like. I know it's small, but they're just objects. They're just files. Well, you do know what backup to restore from, but the problem is you can't do inside the here if you were to restore this, for example. So right now all these files are deleted. That's why there's a little asterisk on them. So if we go to our TrueNAS and we go to data protection, if we go to do a restore, wrong TrueNAS. Let me switch over to the other one. But if I go to data protection and do a restore, there's nothing to restore because all the files have been deleted. Now, inside of the browser, when you're browsing files, the files are there because of the bucket settings, but you have to go to each file. There's no restore option in here. You have to download every single file one by one. There's not a way to revert or mass revert at all, at least not that I can find. The client understands which objects belong to which backups. It's not human readable. There's part of the problem too. If you're using, and as you should be using, encrypt before send, there's no relationship to know what these files are. So you have that problem as well. Now, I think the solution for this, and there's a lot of people on here, if someone knows the answer, you probably could use a script to look for the latest version of the file, not the deleted version. And then that script would go through and from the CLI run and put all those versions back somewhere. I think that's the solution that would work. It would be tedious, but it would be a solution. And this is a full DR recovery. Things have gone horribly wrong solution. This is everything has hit the fan. Threat actors were able to do crazy, crazy things. They went through and stole your API keys. They messed with all your files. And yeah, that would be, but those are scenarios that happen. And I always think like, how do you DR plan against this? And I think that's where maybe I'll do a video deep dive on this as a topic of, what would the methodology be? What would the scenario be that you have to go through? And like I said, I was kind of surprised to really poke at this and realize that there's no way natively here that I can find. This is why I was hoping I was wrong, because I have searched for it. I have spent time talking to ChatGPT about it. I can't find an answer to this. And I went through documentation and things like that. I just couldn't find a answer. And it's the same in multiple platforms. StorJ, same problem. Backblaze, same problem. I imagine, and if I'm wrong about this, other cloud providers have a similar thing. You can set a retention setting on the bucket, and the bucket will allow you to restore, but it doesn't have a mass restore option through the web UI. And according to ChatGPT, the other services don't have it either. But ChatGPT, I know it can be wrong at times. Self-hosted is not bad with password managers. You just have to maintain the self-hosted infrastructure for it, which people are bad about maintaining self-hosted infrastructure. I don't think there's any problem with Bitwarden and letting them host it. It's a solid platform where they do not have your data in an unencrypted form. So I don't think using Bitwarden is a massive security risk. The other downside of self-hosting is not just the updating the infrastructure, but making sure that infrastructure is accessible. Either A, put it behind a VPN and a reverse proxy. Then everyone has to be on a VPN and reverse proxy all the time. Or self-host it and make it publicly exposed, but now you have to harden it against someone DDoSing you and making your password manager unusable. Then you could get around that with Cloudflare tunnels. But now you've added more complexity to your setup that you could just, for the same price and actually less money technically, let Bitwarden do it, because it just makes sense. Yeah, B2 doesn't have a way to do it, and that I can tell. StorJ doesn't have a way as either. So, yeah, quick AI script generation shows your theory is correct. Maybe I'll put that together and share it so we can get together. See, and I think you're right on there, Chris. You've nailed it. I think that's where, and it's just weird that there's not a GitHub I found that has the script in it. Why? I mean, the scenario has probably happened before. Just throwing it out there. There's someone that's fixed this. There's someone who's run into this. I can't be over. Maybe I'm overthinking it. Maybe threat actors generally, because we'll say this is probably true. Not all threat actors are of the highest caliber of skill, and they are trying to get to the money part of what they do as fast as possible. And the money part may not be taking the time to destroy backups that are in an S3 repository. Because sometimes, and this is unfortunately true, and not everyone realizes this, sometimes companies pay ransom because the act of downloading the cloud backup and the time it will take to do it is so long and so expensive, the ransomware pay is less money. So they make a business decision. Well, we can restore all these servers. All of our backups are intact. How long will that take? It's going to take 2 weeks. How long if we pay the ransom? We can do this in 2 days. And a decision is made. How much downtime do we want? That's why sometimes companies pay, just because bandwidth costs money and egress costs money. And sometimes the ransomware negotiators will negotiate to a lower price to be less expensive than your alternative options to getting your files back. I'm glad Chris is looking at this, so we have like another person looking at it. Oh man. I thought it was the same problem. Then I saw someone mention use publicly accessible with the MTLS as an alternative. Yeah, there's other options. If you lose a VDI to reference, you have no easy way to restore VDI to VM. It's a serious complaint of mine. Was then, I don't understand why that's a problem at all. What do you mean you lose VDI reference to your VM? How would you do that? Like, your backups solve that problem. That's you can, if this is really a problem for you, which as much Zen as we manage, it's not a problem. You can dump a list and maintain that database if you wanted to. So the VDI files look like, the names if you want, but I can't see any reason or use case or problems I've had with that. I mean, I can't imagine losing a Zen pool and all the metadata while at the same time having all the files intact and go, oh no, I need to build a relationship between these again. The backups are the solution to that problem. The backups are like what I was pointing out earlier in TrueNAS was just the min.io backups. And if we go over to my Zen server, share this tab instead. Right here is my TrueNAS S3. Matter of fact, let's turn this one off. Backup, restore. I can restore this because these are some of my offsite backups. I can just hit restore. There's my UniFi backup. There's all the revisions of it, and I can restore it somewhere else. So this is remote. It's this particular remote is not a different network than mine. Both of them send to min.io, and I can pull backups from any one of these Zen servers. I've talked about this in my Zen, how Zen works. So I don't understand that as a problem at all. You had storage get erased. I mean, you can do things that, like if I were to completely erase the storage and have to restore a backup, I mean, that's a weird scenario. And at that point, you could also just do an export. As long as you have all the data backed up, you can use the Zen command line to dump a list and say, hey, show me all the VM names by name and export them to all their attached storage names, because they're all UUIDs. You could export all that UUID data. I mean, that's a kind of a weird scenario. It's not a common scenario that does it. It sounds like someone goofed up. If the storage, it's not a problem in Zen where storage randomly disappears and breaks. It's usually someone broke a thing. And if someone breaks a thing, well, then that is a weird scenario. But like I said, having backups of everything is the solution to that. Actually, do I even have, I don't think this system has any. No, this one doesn't. Let me switch to another one. Wait, this one doesn't either. Currently, the ones I have set up, I've just removed all the remote storage. Because but yeah. But if you have remote storage, there's ways to relink it. It's just tedious because it's a very uncommon problem. It requires someone to have created the problem, I should say. It's not a problem that naturally occurs. It's not like a bug. It's someone purged all the storage. I'm guessing it isn't a script because each backup is different, each user's and it's easier to attach another client to the bucket and reverse engineer the backup tool. I mean, it's just our clone, but yeah. Well, B2 shipping, there's definitely a way to do it. That is another workaround for the ransomware problem. Is just do that. Edit a podcast episode. Catch you later. Thanks for dropping by, Beard IT Dad. Thanks for all the donations. Much appreciated. Yeah, I found a script in. I have not at all validated this. So let me drag it over here. But ChatGPT had some ideas on how to do this. So maybe these would work. I was talking to it about Backblaze. It came up with a basic script for doing this with Backblaze, which I thought was cool. Extract version ID and find them. I mean, it looks pretty straightforward. And you could then do this, but I don't know. It seems weird that this doesn't exist. That's my bigger problem with any of it, is that it doesn't exist. VM migration to a new pool, and during the migration, the source went offline. That's an interesting one. I'm building a new Zen lab with more nodes, and I will test for that failure scenario. I will unplug something during a live migration, and it should, you are correct, I believe, in thinking that it should fail where it exists in both places during a migration. But that would be an interesting failure. So, I like testing all these failure ideas, and that's why I build my labs the way I do, so I can actually pull the plug on meaningless machines, if you will, that I set up for scenarios and kind of keep recreating, potential events that could happen. It's an interesting one, though. But I don't know. Maybe I'll iterate more with ChatGPT and play around with this and see if we can make these scripts, throw them in my GitHub before I do it. Like, hey, I wouldn't make it really part of the video. I'll just say, here's an idea and a solution in case you run into this, because there's not a way to do it. Because I want to do an updated video on cloud backups, because when it comes to StorJ, I actually think it's a pretty solid backup solution for TrueNAS. Matter of fact, one of the things I like about the StorJ is, I don't want to run it right now. You set how many snapshots. They're not the same as the ZFS snapshots, but you can create snapshots and say, hey, let's go ahead and restore this. Or you can get granular and have it restore something specific. Like, let's restore this to here, set a new local target, cloud restore test, save, and it does the restore. Like, I will say, from an ease of use, the integration of StorJ and TrueNAS, it works. It gets the job done. And now we're restored. Well, restored what I wanted to restore. And I know a lot of people, I mean, I completely recognize most people are not in my situation where you have multiple buildings to store all this stuff in. So I don't really use these as often, but I'm going to start probably using just so I have one extra copy, and it's so inexpensive. Maybe I'll do some of my backups over on StorJ. Have you tried Google Gemini AI? Yes. I actually found Google Gemini works really well for Google Gemini has been my go-to for all the Google things I do. Like YouTube things seem to come out really good inside of Gemini. ChatGPT, not bad. Both of them get a lot wrong, and it drives me crazy. Yeah, it's hard to. Sometimes I'll ask the same question in both, and sometimes both get it wrong. Sometimes one gets it right, one gets it wrong. It's kind of a pain. That's only one aggravation with you is all these large language models is their ability to get things wrong, which is frequent. Kind of drives me a little bit crazy, but I've been playing around for a while, and I've not done a video on it, but maybe I'll do one in the future. But then something broke and I get aggravated, and that's what stops me from doing things. There's a tool called Fabric, and Fabric is a way to integrate several AIs from the command line. If anyone hasn't heard of it, this is that tool. Let me share the screen. Fabric is kind of a cool way to interact with several AIs from the command line. And one of the cool things you can do with this is go back and forth and apply the same question to get multiple results. You can use the same prompt and the same data and ask two different systems, such as, and they've got a long list of them that are supported in here, but you can say, send this to Gemini, send this to ChatGPT. You can specify specific models, and from there, you can see what it does. Like, you can see what the results are for it. And yeah, it's kind of fun. Just came in for 2 minutes. Have to go to sleep. Wish you a happy new year, and thank you for all you do. Awesome, aim. Very much. Thank you for the donation. Is much appreciated. So you're a Fabric user as well. Yeah, Fabric's pretty cool. I have I don't even know what broke in it. My hair is bothering me. Sorry. I get distracted with things. The problem I'm running into recently with Fabric is it doesn't seem to remember all of its variables anymore. And I don't know what I'm missing. I can't show the environment variables, obviously, because it would, it has all my API keys in there. But what I've run into since Fabric updated was it's decided that even when I set a variable, it doesn't retain it, even though the environment variables say they are. So I don't know where it's pulling the data from. It's kind of a weird problem. I might just, because I migrated from the previous version of Fabric and I've goofed with the system a bit, I'm just going to reset it up and figure out why it does that. It's because the API keys are all working, but it won't set the default. It won't set the default. What do you call it anymore? What you want the default AI engine to be. I don't know why. It asks you, but doesn't. So. Yeah, just ask it to hallucinate a solution until it gets it right. Yes. Yeah, the problem with AI is it's such a predictive word machine, and people forget that. It's not really, it doesn't think. This is the thing that drives me nuts, is people that keep thinking it thinks. And I'm like, no, it doesn't think at all. That's exactly where the problem is with it. People keep giving it agency when it doesn't have agency. I said this the other day, or me and a friend were talking. As a matter of fact, me and Rich from Two Guys Tech were talking about this. Is AI doesn't know anything. It doesn't reason. It doesn't understand. It doesn't comprehend. It's a glorified pattern matcher. When you ask AI a question, It does a search. It doesn't search for facts. It generates the most statistically likely sequence of words based on its training data. That's why I can say the capital of France is something random versus, and the same confidence it says with any other thing. It's just a word prediction engine based on training data. So yes. Yeah, LLMs do not understand at all any of it. Does your company license Windows, Enterprise, or other software? Yeah, we sell licenses for software. I don't, that's not something I deal with at all. You'd have to talk to our salespeople to get answers on that. I don't know. Like, I don't know the details because I don't need to. Yes, we sell Windows licenses. That's all I know. I think there's a lot of interesting use cases for AI. I'm not saying it's useless, but I think too many people prescribe agency to it and they assume it's thinking. At any given moment, it's just awaiting commands. And the delta between where the human brain is versus AI is pretty big. It doesn't think like we do. It doesn't operate like we do. It's just really a unique tool of predictive words, if you will. It's really neat. Like, I think it's very useful. Matter of fact, this conversation I have with this system is great. I like talking to it for these scenarios because it worked well for doing exactly what I wanted it to. But a lot of it comes with prompting. So if you look at the very beginning, for this session, you are a data security expert with expertise in using backups to mitigate threats to data being deleted. Like, you have to tell it what it is. You have to narrow AI in scope. And that's a lot of what Fabric does. This whole system here is all about prompt engineering. That's how I look at this. More than anything else, the prompts are the sauce. It's cool that it's got a framework and everything else. It's not magic. It's really good prompt engineering. And I really like prompt engineering that works this way. I think it's cool. Oh, yeah. Script generation? Hell yeah. The weird part that drives me a little crazy about script generation is it gets things wrong in the weirdest way. It will just sometimes, like, I forget what I was working on, but it decided to just unescape some of the characters. So I'm like, you have to escape these characters, right? This is a common one-on-one stuff, but it'll just dump it wrong. And you're like, huh, it just skipped that. Or you'll tell it to do something and it skips that part, but then you say, hey, it's missing this, and then it fixes it. You're like, okay, why didn't it just do it the first time? And I'm not writing anything complicated. So that's kind of a really weird part about it. Like, AI does not make your level 1 text much better. It makes your level 3 text really good, because the level 3 texts have a lot of experience that they bring to the prompt, that they understand what the output. So level 1 text can kind of be dangerous with AI versus level 3 texts are like, oh man, if you actually ran this code as it gave it to me, it would break this. So I'm going to take this code, which that's clever, except for I'm going to make it right. And now I'm going to implement it. So I think it's a substantially beneficial tool for more advanced people. Does it replace a paralegal? No. But does it make a lawyer less dependent on a paralegal? Possibly. Doesn't mean you don't have to validate all the input. Would a paralegal have the same validation skill set as a lawyer when looking at that output? I don't know. That's where things get a little fuzzy with AI, because you can't take AI at its word. We use AI to write our scopes of work, and it does a great job because we actually hand AI a template. Part of our prompt engineering with AI, and we have an internally hosted one, is you prompt engineer the template for the scope of work, and then you have it examine that scope of work. It does a great job of that. Yeah, level 1 to level 3 tech. This applies to a lot of industries. There's this weird assumption that AI is going to replace the advanced people. And that's the promise, is that, oh, we won't need to hire a bunch of really expensive level 3 engineers. All of a sudden your level 1s will be level 3s. No, it's probably more likely that you'll need less level 1 techs and your level 3s will be able to do more. But It depends, because as long as you have a lot of human interaction, you have a lot of level 1 techs, because level 3 techs, they graduate from human interaction. That's generally the goal of a level 3 tech. It isn't the job, it isn't the pay, it's graduating from human interaction. Because at some point you've heard my printers broke one too many times, and you don't want to sit there anymore and hear about printers being broke or Outlook not doing Outlook things. Which AI do you self-host? The old llama. And I tore them all down at the moment. I'm gonna rebuild them again because I like doing that. And they're all deleted at the moment, but the old llama stuff is pretty cool. I would say, I can't remember which one was it. The Dolphin Mistral I found to work really well. I don't remember. I got to try them because, by the way, they're always changing. So my experience is from a few months ago. They've all been updated since I used them. So don't take that as the only one you should use. But the Olama setup is just really nice. Oh yeah, AI for document translation. Just right, I started. I don't do this often, but sometimes I realize they need a better explanation than I feel like typing right now. So I read faster than I type. I read actually quite fast. So what I do is I'll go say, explain this in terms that someone without this knowledge would need, and I'll put the concept in there. And sometimes it writes out a paragraph. So I'm like, copy, paste. That paragraph is fantastic. That is way more words than, I mean, my prompt was a couple sentences. The reply was a whole paragraph, and it articulated well all the points that I would have typed out myself. And it just saved me some typing. Sometimes tools like ChatGPT lie or say something. They're never lying. They don't understand what a lie is. They say everything at the same confidence level, which is why it confuses people so much. And confident ignorance is the scariest type. People asked me earlier about some authentication tools that I don't use, and I'm willing to absolutely say I don't know. LLMs don't like saying I don't know. So they will keep answering every question when they don't know the answer to it. They don't do it absolutely, but they do it enough that it drives me bananas. I found that it likes making up ZFS commands. If you really query ChatGPT, I haven't tried it in version 4, but I ran into this a few times before. If you query ChatGPT for some things you want to do in ZFS, it'll make up commands that don't work. I was just puzzled by this. And I couldn't even find these in documentation anywhere. Like, I tried to search for these commands that ChatGPT had made up to tell me how to do something in ZFS. I'm like, this isn't even, I thought maybe it's in a future version of ZFS and it read the docs for it. No, it just made up commands that don't exist. Graduating from human interaction is very rewarding. You can only deal with so many broken Excel macro complaints. That too. I'm not an expert on what GPU to use. There's plenty of GPUs out there. Oh, this is a whole thing as well. I think many of us suffer from some form of spectrum and uniqueness in the IT world, and that uniqueness often makes us very blunt. And yes, it can definitely write better letters and better interactions with humans. Matter of fact, ChatGPT helps you interact with people better because it's based on large volumes of general human knowledge, not necessarily all specific tech knowledge. Where probably much of this audience, if you're hanging out in a live stream with some guy on a Saturday for 2 hours and 45 minutes, you're probably a little bit unique and more tech focused. And the nice thing is, ChatGPT can help you interact with the people who wouldn't understand why you're watching a live stream for several hours on a Saturday. Short and to the point sometimes can feel abrasive or offensive. Oh yeah. I think the tech people using ChatGPT to interface with salespeople or management people, probably a good solution to your career. I've heard NVIDIA works the best from a few people. Wendell from Level 1 Techs has covered a couple other um, in lesser expensive cards that are supposed to be favorable to AI. So check out Level 1 Techs. They've done a couple. Wendell's done a couple reviews on some of those. And the fact that Vlog Thursday on a Saturday bothers me. Well, I'm just trying to keep up consistency because I was so sick on Thursday and Friday I couldn't do it. But yes, it bothered me too. But I wanted the consistency in the numbers. But yeah, there's I'm really like, what is that? Is it the new Jetson? Is it NVIDIA Jetson? I just can't remember if that's the one I'm looking for or not. Uh, yeah, Dave's Garage did a video on this. The NVIDIA Edge AI one. These are cool because at $249 they're not crazy expensive and offer some interesting power. So I think there's some really neat stuff coming out. So I don't think AI is useless. Like I said, I think it's overhyped, but we're getting some cool stuff out of it. Yeah, I really like Dave's channel. I've chatted with Dave a couple times about TrueNAS, and because he had some questions. I think we went back and forth on Reddit. But Dave's great. Yeah, interesting guy. I not had any bad interactions with him. I like that he just dumps a bunch of knowledge out there, and that's amazing. He makes a lot of interesting videos and talks about some of the history behind the scenes at Microsoft. Oh yeah, fear. If you want a fun read, I talked about this earlier, but he is definitely funny. If you haven't followed Ed, he's got a lot of stuff on AI, and it's not about AI being bad. It's about the bad actors that are in there, and it's he's got a lot of well researched. By the way, something this is how you can tell if someone's actually a proper journalist and does something right. Easy tell. Uh, all the things he cites are noted. See all these links? Look at this. Isn't that amazing? All these links to support all the evidence he presents you. Amazing. This is something that I always try to do is give people as many links as possible to explain how I came to stuff. Often I've been putting them in like a forum post, but they're all there. They're all part of the research I did to come to any particular conclusion. But he does this as a journalist really, really well. And I like anyone who says, here's my opinion. Here's, what any of these journalists, and there may be some fact reporting, but there may be some opinion, because opinion is OpenAI is a bad business. But the facts behind it of how he came to that conclusion are really interesting. And I think Ed Zitron does a killer job on this. So if you're interested in deeper understanding of the bad actors around AI, definitely pretty good. I haven't followed deeply, but I know there are some I know there are some jailbreaks that are kind of interesting. I've not really looked into it far. XOA Exostore on 4 epics. Yeah, the epic processors. We just did some of those, man. They're fast. They are really nice. Yeah, Ed Zitron. I'll throw this link in here, but it's where's your Ed at? Is his he's got a podcast too. You can find all of his links from there. I don't follow everything Ed does, because sometimes, I mean, I think his journalism is good, but it's sometimes depressing to hear how bad all these people are that are performing in these things. And so it can be a bit much. I try to not dwell on things that are intense like that, but I've read numerous ones on OpenAI that he's posted, and yes, I agree with him a lot, unfortunately. So you have the original Jetson TX2. Is that the original one? Yeah, the new ones are cheaper and faster. I mean, that's where you want technology to go. It costs less than it did before, even adjusted for inflation. It's substantial. Matter of fact, if you adjust it for inflation, it's actually way cheaper than half. Because was inflation right now 4%. And when was the last one? I don't know. I'm not going to do the math right now. Anyways, even adjusted for inflation, it's less than half now. Second iteration. Okay, Nano was the first. It's so cool that they're working on these, though. There's some neat stuff coming out. I'm excited about it. I love playing with all this stuff. That's why I want to. That's probably my next project. Is possibly. I got this server sitting here. I keep saying I'm going to put these fans in. This was Thursday's project. I was sick Thursday. Friday I was sick. So I got to put all these in my 45 drive server. Maybe I'll do that tonight. That'll be my Tom relaxes, takes apart a server. I got to do the before and after, because people want to know how loud it was, how loud it is. So I'll be doing that as a video as well. What motherboard is your HL15? Whatever 45 drives put in it. I don't remember. I don't know the model number. It's whatever one that they ship in it. I didn't change out to a different one. I have the stock. Well, technically, I did have to change the motherboard, because the one they shipped originally had a bad motherboard. Well, the ports were bad, the 10 gig ports. Weird problem. Matter of fact, the weird problem is they showed up as SFP 28s in the BIOS, but they were not SFP 28s. They're standard SFP plus 10 gig DAC ports, or SFP ports. And I was like, huh. Plan to use Optane DC memory with it? I don't know. Maybe I'll look and if it's supported. Maybe I don't know if that board supports it or not, so I can't answer that question. The original HL15 board is a Super Micro first gen. Yeah, I know it's a Super Micro board. I just don't know the model. Maybe it's written on the board. I'm not taking it apart. So if it does support it, maybe I'll play with some of that memory. Ooh, you have a reasonable proof of concept script. I tested against TrueNAS dataset in a B2 bucket. Interesting. Versions have been restored. Probably needs production ready with some path options. That's awesome, Chris. You got my emails. Send it to me. I believe. Yeah, pretty sure you got. I'm an easy person to find. I think you have my emails. That would be interesting. Let's talk about that. Fantastic. Super Micro X11 SPH NCTF. Okay, so that's probably what's in there. I didn't change. I got the stock motherboard. I've actually got some scratches and scuffs on my HL15 because it's gone between several buildings and it has done numerous backups. It has done a lot of data moving, and I'm not really ever put it in production. I've always just needed it to back up something because I wanted to move some data around, and then repurposed it, which is actually really kind of cool because as an HL15, I like its durability. Like I'm not worried about moving it around all these times. and the quality at which it's built, I think speaks for itself. Like that's been something nice about it. So my goal though is to put it in production in my new lab, and I don't know what it's going to live as. I don't want to just load TrueNAS on it, but TrueNAS becomes so easy for having a bunch of storage. But I don't know. Maybe it'll get straight Debian and build on top of Debian and everything custom. It's a handy box for sure. I like it. I have right now, even my TrueNAS boxes that I have, and I have shared. I got to probably do an updated what's in my lab before I tear it down. But the TrueNAS boxes I have right now, see which one's this one. I still have this one, which is the TrueNAS Mini 3.0. Where's my other one? And this is one where all my videos are right now, is the Mini R. So it's got, what are these? Some 9 terabyte drives in it. That's the rusty ones. These are the flashy ones. It's not, these are both a little long in the tooth for speed. I mean, the processors in these are, what are they? Atom 3758, but nothing I do requires much horsepower. It's mostly just storage. Storage doesn't require that much horsepower. As long as, I mean, it serves up 10 gigs with my videos, and that's what matters. As long as I have 10 gig video access, I don't need fast. I'm not even saturating the 10 gig when I edit. I record everything in 4K 60. I cut it down to 4K 30 because I could probably go back to 4K 60. But when I had an older computer, 4K 60, when you did the export, was taking way too long. And I don't mean double. It was taking substantially longer. Maybe it's a problem with DaVinci. I don't know. But moving it over to 4K 30 made my workflow so much smoother. But even though I'm ingesting everything at 4K 60, it's just something about the editing workflow that got better. We use a Mini R in our XCP-NG test lab. Far cry from production array, but more than enough for a test lab. Oh yeah, yeah. That's something else. I mean, my storage does attach to it when I set. I have no systems of storage set up, but that's one of the systems I use to test the storage on. I have a much more performant system that is going to get repurposed now. I got to reload it still because I want to rebuild this one differently. Which is my 45 drives Q30. But this one has a lot more memory in it. So there's a, it's still only 10 gig connectivity, but 10 gigs plus a Xeon 4210 and 128 gigs of RAM. Yeah, this one performs really well. Caching is your absolute best feature of ZFS. So you got caching going on, you get the performance steps up so much better. I got to eliminate some drives from it because I got some drives that have problems. Upgrade. But we've hit the 3-hour mark. So I'm going to wind it down and chill out and possibly do the 45 drive server so I can get that moved over to production. Yeah, the Q30 is great. It's just a giant data storage workhorse, and it's fast. I like it a lot. I really think the Q30, I've had it now for 4 or 5 years, and it's been an absolute trouble-free system. So I highly recommend it. But I'm going to wind this down here at 3 hours. Thank you, everyone, for joining. Thank you, Chris, for creating a script that does some restores. I'm excited to poke at that. That's going to be interesting for sure. But thanks, everyone, for joining. I've been also, I have a workflow again for using ChatGPT for transcribing all the videos in post. So if you want to go back, I've been going back through some of the older live streams and adding all the timestamps to them. By the way, I should do a video on that workflow so you can do it too. There's tools out there. So if you want to transcribe any video and just figure out the context of it, it's only as good. And I want to emphasize this. It's only as good as Google's transcribing can make it. So sometimes, especially in tech, when you use a lot of unique words, Google Translate has another idea of what that word was, and you can get some confusing transcripts out of it. But yeah, there's some cool transcripting tools out there. Yes, developing the workflows is what's important. Unfortunately, I can't fix bad translation, but I read them and fix them myself. So I take the 3-hour live stream, I run it through transcription, I take what it thinks thinks the idea should be, and I correct it to the correct one. And I try to make them more accurate that way. All right. Thanks everyone, and take care.